I'm going to call to order the Burke County Board of Commissioners regular meeting for Tuesday, May 17th, 2022. I'd like to welcome everybody out in the audience and those watching on YouTube. Madam Clerk, we have all 5 commissioners present, our county finance officer, our county attorney, and our county manager, ma'am. I would remind everybody in the audience to please silence your mobile devices. And if you are here to speak tonight, when you come forward, please make sure the red light on the microphone is activated, because we are broadcasting on YouTube and we want them to be able to hear the questions you have. That being said, at this time, I'm going to ask Commissioner Taylor to lead us in the invocation, and if you will also remain standing, I'm going to ask our county attorney to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance.
That you have blessed us. You give us a good day. You give us air to breathe. Father, we want to thank you for the farmers who raise the food that we eat daily. Father, we thank you for blessing us with good health. Father, we want to thank everybody in our county today who chose to vote. Father, we thank you for their participation, and Father, we pray that your will be done. Father, we also want to pray for rain. Father, we know that the fields and the gardens and the pastures need the rain to supply the food. Father, now we pray for each one here in this meeting. Father, help us to discern the things that would be pleasing unto thee. And thank you for each person who attends and participates. We ask these blessings in thy Son's name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Commissioner Taylor.
Please join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, gentlemen, for leading us in that. We'll move on to item number 4, the approval of agenda. Gentlemen, the agenda is amended. Item 14, recess, will be changed to adjourn. Both budget meetings are now special called meetings due to scheduling conflicts. So, gentlemen, you've had an opportunity to review the agenda. We have a motion to accept.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Taylor. All those in favor signify with the uplifted hand. 5-0, Madam Clerk. Moving on to item number 5, approval of meeting minutes for January 4th, 2022, pre-agenda meeting, January 18th, 2022, regular meeting, February 1st, 2022, pre-agenda meeting. Gentlemen, you've had an opportunity to review these minutes. Do we have a motion to accept?
Mr. Chairman, I reviewed all 3, did not find any major errors, and I make the motion that they all 3 be approved as presented.
Thank you, Commissioner Taylor. All those in favor of Commissioner Taylor's motion signify with the uplifted hand. Motion carried 5-0, Madam Clerk. This moves us to item number 6, presentations. This one's always fun. Pets of the Month, presented by Caitlin Suttermeyer, our Animal Services Director. How are you, Caitlin?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having us. So for our Pets of the Month, I normally bring a critter with me, but Mr. Gerald is our Dog of the Month this month, and I went backwards, I'm sorry. Mr. Gerald is our Dog of the Month this month, and he is still learning how to be social in social settings, so he was a little shy and didn't feel comfortable coming today. But this is Gerald. He is absolutely wonderful. He is working on leash training and just getting to know people and just gaining trust in people. So he is going to make somebody a wonderful dog. He loves to come out and play with the staff, loves squeaky toys. So if you are needing to donate some squeaky toys, Gerald would absolutely love those until he is able to find his new family. So if you have a little bit of time and you're looking to add a furry family member, Gerald would be absolutely perfect. So he is about 2 years old. He is a male. He's going to get neutered this week. So he will be ready for his forever home very, very soon. But that's why he didn't get to come with us today. So if you want to meet him, swing by the shelter and come and visit him. Our kitty cat that we have is Mr. Josh. Josh is actually blind in one eye, so he needs to go to an indoor-only home. But he is a 2-year-old. He is incredibly sweet, loves to give head rubs. He acts more like a puppy dog than a kitty cat. So if this could be a good companion for you, come and check him out. We have plenty of cats and kittens. Kitten season has just started, and we took in 21 today. So we are on the cusp of taking in a bunch of cats and kittens. And if you have cats and kittens that you are feeding, please reach out to us about spay-neuter options, because that is one of the only ways that we can get through this together. Some other news that we have coming up in Animal Services, we are just about to launch our RPO program thanks to a grant through the Ralston Foundation and from our Animal Services Foundation. So this is a responsible pet ownership class that I've been pretty excited about. Our first class is set to go on June the 11th, and this is for people who we may have to visit on animal welfare checks that they're not in compliance with our ordinance. People just willing or wanting to know a little bit more about responsible pet ownership, people that may need access to some spay-neuter options. We do have an incentive program built into this, so if you attend that class, you will be able to apply for a free spay-neuter, either help with veterinary care, maybe some fence options as far as containment systems, a dog house, whatever you may need to help come into compliance, because we do know that sometimes money is tight, especially nowadays. So this is a very exciting program. With this, we hope to have a decrease in citations and calls for service. So this is something that we're gearing towards animal control. As always, we are always looking for people to adopt and foster for us. Right now is a really big season for fostering. So if you have a heart for cats and kittens, come down, see us. We'll get you signed up to foster with us. It's normally a 2 to 4 week commitment for our kitty cats. So, and then we always need dog fosters. We have lots of adorable puppy dogs right now too.
Gentlemen, you've heard the presentations. Questions, comments for Caitlin?
Tell us about the award you got.
Oh, yes. So my coordinator and I, we applied for the Best Friends scholarships to attend their national conference in Raleigh this year, and we were both awarded those scholarships to attend that conference that covers the fee for the conference as well as some lodging expenses. So we're pretty excited about that. That's a big accomplishment. So
Well deserved. Any other comments, gentlemen?
Just
Well-
congratulations.
Absolutely. Just that, the dog that was reluctant to come in here last month,
Yeah.
was he adopted?
he was adopted.
Okay, good.
I think 2 days after that, we had a gentleman come in and take him for the weekend. So, and he was adopted, sweet Logan.
That's great. Well, I appreciate the presentation. Great job as usual, and you deserve that trip. So
Thank you.
that's fantastic.
Appreciate
And I
it.
would encourage everybody to please adopt an animal or foster, but especially if we can get Gerald and Josh adopted tonight, that would be fantastic. So thank you, Kate.
And how long did it take you to teach your son how to herd goats?
It was instinctual for him to get out there and run those goats around.
Gentlemen, that'll move us to item number 2, Tourism Development Authority Financial Update for the period ending March 31st, 2021, which I know is already positive because I heard it earlier today at our meeting, presented by Ed Phillips.
Good evening. So first of all, I want to cover the financial aspects and then give you a little anecdotes of what's going on with tourism in Burke County. You have in front of you on the packet of page 4, our budget to actual July through March 31st. We did have a budget of $600,000. Through March, we had collected $486,000. And we're doing really well on our expenses. We have the balance sheet, the next page, as of March 31st, $631,000 in the bank. We do have encumbered $54,894.42 for the city of Morganton, and the town of Valdez, $80,424.06. That's their draw. They will draw that down. In fact, Valdez has drawn that down some since then, and Morganton will be drawing that down this month, actually, so we've received a request from that. I want to talk about a couple of things. As far as visitors, and I had said at pre-agenda, we'd had a record January through March, and Commissioner Taylor had asked me a question about that. So we had 195 visitors in the visitor center January through March. They came from 28 different U.S. states and Canada. It's the most we've ever seen in that time period, and from those number of states, including Canada, in that time period. There's a lot of reasons for that, but the Southeast U.S. is a very popular destination now, not only for visitors, but also people looking to move, looking to relocate here. It's interesting also, yesterday I was on a conference call with a firm that analyzes vacation rentals, because we've been telling folks we've had 160 vacation rentals in one count, and then like 140 in another. And it's hard to count, actually, because to give you an example, if somebody has a vacation rental and you go online and look for it today and it's available, you can find it and you can count all of those. But if someone's staying in that vacation rental or it's booked, it doesn't show up anywhere because it's booked. You can't look at it. So we had an online meeting yesterday. It's called AirDNA. And they told us that since 2016, Burke County has had 212 separate individual vacation rentals. So they've counted those for us to tell us how many we've had since 2016. Now, does that mean today there's 212 online? No. It varies every day, goes up and down every day. But with gas prices going high, traditionally, that has helped the foothills and all of western North Carolina. People can travel with a tank of gas from Charlotte, Greensboro, Raleigh, Greenville, South Carolina, Columbia, South Carolina, and they come to the mountains rather than taking trips further away. So that's been a huge boon for us here in the last few months. We don't like to get high gas prices. Personally, I don't like them. I don't think anybody does, but it does help tourism in Burke County and in western North Carolina. We just had our Last of the Mohicans Festival on Saturday on the Courthouse Square downtown here. I can tell you it was a tremendous success. We had people from all over the country. We had people from South America fly in for this thing. We had a break-even budget for it, and we met that budget, maybe a little bit to the positive, but the publicity that generated for Burke County was tremendous. Alice Dare Frazier was our headline act at 4 o'clock on Saturday. He played the fiddle in the Last of the Mohicans soundtrack. He also played on the Titanic soundtrack. And he played at 4 o'clock Saturday, and it was absolutely amazing. We have a video of that we're going to release out, and maybe next time, sometime I come back, I'll show you guys. But it was very emotional for a lot of people, too. We had Leon Goodstriker, Native American from Alberta, Canada, who was on the film, flew in, and he spent 5 days here. Alice Dare Frazier spent 5 days here and just loved it. So it was a really tremendous event for tourism here, and to celebrate a movie that was filmed here in 1991 that meant a lot to a lot of people. So that's my report.
Gentlemen, comments, questions? Well, I can speak on behalf of TDA and just personally and Board of Commissioners. I was up there, as you know, for all afternoon. It was a fantastic event, had so many vendors, and most of the people I did not know, which is what you want to see on weekends in downtown. I mean, it was people from all over. I think you said Beaufort was, there's a whole family from Beaufort and South Carolina, and that's Beaufort, South Carolina. Beaufort's North Carolina. I got to get that correct. I may get ostracized if I not, but it was absolutely beautiful. The music was incredible. The speakers were great. He did an outstanding job. I will say, just for Ed's one of those rare people. Sometimes you get people that are idea people, and sometimes you get people that are implementation people. He happens to be both, because he sat on my back deck about last summer and said, I got an idea, 30th anniversary for Last of the Mohicans. And I'm like, huh. And I said, how are you going to pull it off? And he did, and it was an amazing job. So I want to thank you and all the staff and the Chamber of Commerce as well, because y'all helped out tremendously too. So it was a group effort from both organizations. So good job. Well, gentlemen, you've heard the report. Do we have a motion to accept the report as presented? Thank you, Commissioner Taylor. All those in favor signify with uplifted hand. Thank you, gentlemen. That's 5-0, Madam Clerk. We'll move on to presentation number 3, overview of BSAN's overdose data dashboard, presented by our good friend Kim James, Burke Substance Abuse Network. Kim, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Wonderful.
So I'm excited to share the beauty of community partnerships. So a lot of the work that we do with Burke Substance Abuse Network and Burke Recovery is not exactly positive work, but sometimes we need to shine a light on the shadows to be able to figure out what we can do together and how to empower each other. And so we started looking in 2021 at the data we were seeing as far as overdose across our community. The numbers that we were seeing reported to the state versus the numbers that we were seeing in our backyards were vastly different. And so we came together with a team comprised of law enforcement and medical providers, obviously substance use providers, and we put together what we call our data team and developed a data dashboard. We actually look through all 911 call center reports, and we look at emergency visits to the hospital, and we were able to pull fatal and non-fatal overdose information. You can see that information on the Burke Substance Abuse Network website. We're excited to show that these are solid numbers and we can actually do something about it. Before we can solve a problem, we really need to understand what that problem looks like. And so we realized that in 2021, overdoses were up 18% versus what we had seen in 2020. Sadly, I do think that 2022 will exceed those numbers, but in order to address it, we need to know what it really looks like and how we're going to tackle that. I can also share that overdose by substance, you'll see that fentanyl is up 313% over 2020. Heroin is up 23%. The scary part about fentanyl, and we're hearing about it all over the place all the time, is we have a lot of pressed pills. We also have a lot of lacing that's happening. So there's cross-contamination, and with fentanyl, we talk about one pill can kill. You can try something one time, and that's the only chance that you get to experiment or use or what have you. This is a very different thing than we've ever seen before. And again, in order to look at it and figure out how to solve it, we need to understand what it is. When we look at age and overdose by age, we're seeing that our main age group, it's not a teenage thing, right? It's not these, high schoolers that are acting like idiots, experimenting. That's what we used to say. That's absolutely not the picture now. This is a very pervasive disease. It affects ages 19 through 60 primarily, but we had an 80-year-old who overdosed just accidentally taking too much pain medication. So we are putting into place a lot of things, including timer caps for prescription bottles. We're putting into place Narcan across the community. That's another thing I'd like to point out. When we introduce Narcan into the community, Burke Substance Abuse Network works in coordination with Burke Recovery, the health department, and a couple other organizations to distribute Narcan for free. If you want to go into a pharmacy and purchase Narcan, you can. There's a standing order. You don't have to have a prescription to do so, but it's going to cost you about $120. If you have insurance, your copay is still going to run you about $40. We are able, through grant funding, to be able to provide that for free. We do pay a wholesale cost. We pay about $75 a box, but that's not the point. There's no value that we can, put on that. Saving a life is priceless, right? So we've seen that Narcan use used on site is up 84%. I would love to say that's because we are out pushing Narcan into the community, that we have more lives saved because of that. But we are also seeing that because drugs have gotten so strong, opioids are so strong, fentanyl is so strong that it's taking up to 8 or 9 doses of Narcan to bring somebody back. That's terrifying. So it's really honestly a combination. I have to be a realist and explain that it's not just that we're doing good work, but it's also that things are getting worse out there. But the beauty of putting all of this together and having all this information out there is that associations and organizations and coalitions like the Burke Substance Abuse Network can come together and start developing solutions, implement programming, and work with individuals and agencies and other coalitions to make that happen. On May 27th, we will be having our monthly BSAN meeting, and we will be reviewing a 3-year planning process that we've done in coordination with the Kate B. Reynolds Charitable Trust to look at our community and determine how do we move forward with smaller programming, bigger ideas, all different pieces that we're putting together. We'll be revealing all of that information at 8 o'clock in coordination with the North Carolina Institute for Public Health. And so we're really excited to share all of that. If anybody would like more information or would like to come to those meetings, you're welcome to go to our website, which is joinbsan.com, or you can call us at 433-1221. So that is my short and sweet, yay, we're an awesome community, and this is a scary thing, but we're really trying to tackle it.
Gentlemen, you've heard Kim's presentation. Questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman, Kim, that was a wonderful report, and you were talking about treating a problem area, and I guess my question is, how do we as a community and a county get ahead of the program and we don't have kids on drugs? How do we, I guess I'm looking for a perfect world, and it would be wonderful to have one, but it seems like we're always pushing a resolve after we're deep into something. So what can you say to young kids? Well, you got adults on it too, but.
I would say our biggest piece in this fight is education and awareness. If we can prevent something upstream from happening downstream, that's your key. That doesn't mean we don't look at treatment, we don't look at intervention, but if we can start working with children in elementary school even. I mean, we have third graders who are violating drug-free policies because they're vaping in school. So if we can address that early on, which we're working with Burke County Public Schools, they've been fantastic about helping to coordinate this effort. If we can hit it there, and then in turn we affect parents, we affect grandparents, we really get the information out there so people understand the dangers of it, what addiction looks like, how do we avoid that, and moving forward, then that helps. That always requires funding, and you guys know how this works. Funding comes after the situation's been identified as a problem. And so we are looking at promoting more prevention in our community, but that's truly where the solution lies, is in prevention work.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, gentlemen? Well, Kim, great presentation, very thorough, somewhat, and obviously sad, but very thorough, so we appreciate the update.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
great work.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, we've heard the presentation. Do we have a motion to accept the report as presented? Thank you, Commissioner Taylor. All those in favor signify with uplifted hand. Madam Clerk, that is 5-0. Moving on to item number 7. Item number 7, we have no scheduled public hearings tonight, so we'll move on to item number 8, informal public comments. I will remind each speaker when you come up front, please make sure the light at the podium is on so our folks on YouTube can hear you, hear your comments. I would ask you to stick with the 3-minute limit if you, when you do speak. And at this point, Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers signed up to speak?
Yes, sir, we do. We have 3 that pre-registered. The first one is Marnie Pritchard.
Do I need to press to speak? There's a sign.
It's already activated, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. I am Marnie Pritchard, 32-year resident of Burke County, having lived in Oak Hill on Irvin Road and currently at 2278 John Bird Road. I am a child of the South, born and raised in Camden, South Carolina, the very center of the state. Our black maid, Annie, helped raise me. I remember integration, which happened during my 3rd and 4th grades at Camden Elementary. I read Gone with the Wind in one weekend the summer I turned 12, and it's still my favorite book and movie by far. This is in the fabric of my being, and this is my heritage. Through my paternal grandmother, I'm a descendant of Lieutenant General Wade Hampton, who commanded a cavalry brigade under Generals Jeb Stuart and Robert E. Lee. If my daddy had grown a beard, he would have looked exactly like General Hampton. Same forehead, same brilliant blue eyes. I could be a daughter of the Confederacy if I so chose. I want to learn from and honor my history. This is the fabric of my being, and this is my heritage. I'm a child of Bethesda Presbyterian Church in Camden, where I sang in a choir loft that was originally built for people who were in bondage to the church members sitting downstairs. I still sing the same hymns, anthems, and spirituals I learned in that loft, where I also learned to love the church. It's because of my faith that I'm here today. This is the fabric of my being, and this is my heritage. My mama raised me to love my neighbors as myself, to show Southern hospitality, and to respect everyone I meet. And I do to the best of my ability. Loving my neighbors involves listening to the people of color who are crying out that a statue honoring ancestors who fought for states' rights to perpetuate slavery dishonors their ancestors who died in bondage. Showing Southern hospitality means I don't support graven images that make those around me feel unwelcome. Being respectful means that I honor and stand with people of color and try to understand and value their experience, which has so often been ignored by the fine Southern folk who look like me, who are made of the same fabric, who have the same heritage. If you have the same heritage, your mama most likely taught you as well to love your neighbors, to show Southern hospitality, and to respect those around you. I believe we all can do a better job. Many times I've heard the phrase, it's heritage, not hate. I have the same heritage, and I say it's time. It's time to move the statue. If you have the same heritage, I ask you to act. Join me in saying that we have other ways to honor our history. It's time. It's time to move the statue. Month after month, this county commission allows speakers to step up to voice their thoughts on this issue, listening patiently and politely. I am calling on you, gentlemen, to step up, to act, to realize that it is time. It's time to move the statue. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pritchard.
Maggie McKinney.
I'm Maggie McKinney. I live at 234 North Anderson Street, a mile from the statue. And at your March meeting, a very nice, sincere man of the same faith as I am read a Bible verse saying that it proved that we should keep the statue. I looked it up, Proverbs 22:28, which says, "Do not remove the ancient landmark that your ancestors set up." I studied it further and discovered that what it means, it's not talking about statues, it's talking about stones used to mark boundaries. It was not a command to preserve statues, it was a command not to steal from your neighbor. I agreed wholeheartedly with the man's desire not to deny history. I'd like the statue put somewhere to remind us all that even good and courageous people can get things wrong. What I object to is the statue's location, its height, and its message to many. I was so scared to speak tonight. I don't like quarreling with people that are good people and sincere. I don't like repeating things you've already heard. But I realized I'm not risking anything. Nobody's going to curse at me. Nobody's going to spit at me tonight. I will go home. I will not be arrested. Nobody will move my property line. The other two reasons I'm here is black people of the same faith have taught me and retaught me two things: what forgiveness for real injustice is. It's symbolized forever for me in Charleston, the church, the Emmanuel AME Church, where people welcomed, black people welcomed a white man who then shot and killed 9 of them. Black people have also showed me what real courage is. In 1957, 15-year-old Dorothy Counts walked into a newly integrated school through an angry, jeering mob of peers. They did not even hide their hatred or their feeling of superiority from a photographer for the news. In Morganton, I have met people who took classes prior to protest so they would learn how to not retaliate. If they were treated unjustly, if they were arrested, they had to not only endure that, but also not retaliate. And I don't think we need a statue that intimidates people who have so much to teach us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. McKinney. Madam Clerk?
Kelly Hawkins.
My name is Kelly Hawkins. I live at 108 Riverwoods Drive, and I've lived in Morganton for almost 20 years. 2004. My dad and I are in the car. It's loaded down with my young family's possessions, and he's helping my husband and I move to the house we have just closed on in downtown Morganton. Unexpectedly, we get caught in traffic and are at a standstill. I roll down my window to see what's going on, and I see a parade in the middle of the day for no apparent reason. Then I notice the white robes and Confederate flags. My face turns red. My dad looks at me. I start to unlock the car door, and he throws his arm across my chest. That all parents in this room will recognize that parental knee-jerk reaction to protect our children while driving. You see, my dad had been the curator of the extremist literature collection while in graduate school, and he knows about these groups. I'm from the South, and I'd never experienced anything like this. I was crushed. The years go by, and I attend several sweet Christmas parades with my children. I spend most of the time trying to keep them out of the street as they scramble for candy, and we all look forward to the amazing marching band out of Asheville with the incredible drum corps. But we also know there will be the Daughters of the Confederacy with their hoop skirts, the men with their gray caps, and Dixie blaring from the speakers. I asked myself then, and I ask you all now, why do these groups feel so comfortable here? Why do they choose Morganton to parade around in? 2020, our family has chosen to settle in here in Morganton, to raise our children here in the Burke County Public Schools, to volunteer our time with community organizations and our church. But I'll never forget the day I had one of the most intense arguments I've ever had with one of my children. Inspired by the marches organized by local Black citizens, my kids and I attended many of these events to show our support and grieve together over the murders of so many Black and brown people by police officers across the country. We were also inspired by our own public safety's respectful reaction until the long guns showed up downtown. And my son received a desperate call from a friend who had just been physically assaulted by one of the counter-protesters. You see, he wanted to go support them, to protect them, but I wouldn't let him. Things had amped up. A few days earlier, a man in a truck pulled up to the corner where we were holding signs and asked us if we were Antifa. And he said if we were, we should have our heads blown off. I asked myself then, and I ask each of you now, why did these people and their threats and their guns feel comfortable showing up in downtown Morganton? Why do we greet visitors at each end of the county with Confederate flags and a Confederate statue smack in the middle of town? Why are we comfortable with that? My ancestors fought for the Confederacy. My mother's maiden name is Linville, and I am not comfortable with any of this. We all know there's a way to relocate the Confederate statue from our beautiful courthouse square. A subsection of the law states an object of remembrance can be removed or relocated if a building inspector or similar official has determined it poses a threat to public safety because of an unsafe or dangerous condition. This is a matter of will. We can take these things down if we want to. Other communities in North Carolina have done so. I argue that this statue poses a threat to public safety because of an unsafe or dangerous condition. You are the officials that can make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hawkins. Madam Clerk?
I believe that's all that I have.
All right. And then I will close the public comments, and we'll move on to item number 9. Consent agenda. I'll ask our county manager, Mr. Steen, to review the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the board, we have 12 items on the consent agenda. One Burke County Public Schools financial data for the period ending March 31st, 2022. Clerk, reappointments to Adult Care and Nursing Home CAC. Item 3, clerk, removal from the Animal Advisory Board. Item 4, clerk, appointments to Park and Recreation Commission. Item 5, community development, accept Lake James Camping Resort Trail easement. Item 6, EMS, approval of quality management bylaws. Item 7, finance/general services sewer system resilience project. Item 8, HR, amendment to the Burke County Personnel Policy, Article 5, Section 5-11, technology appropriate use policy. Item 9, JCPC, approval of county plan for Burke County and funding. Item 10, Tax Department, tax collection report for April 2022. Item 11, Tax Department, release refund report for April 2022. And item 12, Western Piedmont Community College financial data for the period ending March 31st, 2022. That concludes your consent agenda.
Gentlemen, you've heard these items presented by our county manager. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Abley. All those in favor signify with uplifted hand. Madam Clerk, that is 5-0. This brings us to item number 10, items for decision. Once again, our county manager, presentation of recommended budget for 2022-2023 and scheduling of public hearing. And this, once again, is presented by our county manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I won't belabor. We've been through this. Actually, this is the 12th time I've presented to you. Thing I'm sure that you're wanting to know right off the bat, tax rate stays the same. You will have revenues coming in or available to you that we'll need to make decisions on that we don't have set for the budget with the American funds from the federal government, as well as opioid settlement funds. So those will be there for future decisions. And we are asking for a 4% cost of living increase for county employees. And you will note that our good friends at Local Government Retirement have increased a second time the contribution we have to make by 1.25%. But again, we will have meetings in the future to be able to go over these and let you look at that. And we look forward to our meetings with you.
Gentlemen, you've heard our county manager. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, to make the motion to acknowledge receipt of the manager's recommended budget for year 22-23 and to schedule a public hearing for Tuesday, June 21st, 2022 at 6 p.m. or as soon thereafter as persons may be heard.
Thank you, Commissioner Taylor. All those in favor of Commissioner Taylor's motion signify with the uplifted hand. Madam Clerk, that is 5-0. We'll move on to the second item for decision, our space needs assessment report, and this will be presented by Margaret Pierce and Brian Neff and Senior Fiscal Analyst Josh Bennett.
I will be deferring to Brian Neef and Josh Bennett for that.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you very much for having us this evening. My name is Josh Bennett. I'm Vice President with Mosley Architects, and I'm here this evening to present to you the space needs assessment and master plan analysis that we've conducted with Burke County and select departments over the last several months. I will say from the very beginning that the staff that we've interacted with here in the county have been nothing but outstanding. They've represented themselves in this county in the best possible way. They've given a lot of thought and effort themselves to this process, and I think this document shows that. You have in front of you an executive summary this evening. This document attempts to provide a brief summary of our findings. This document is not intended to be instructions. This is not to be taken and simply executed. They are merely recommendations to be tweaked and worked out through time and revisited as the county begins to implement changes. So our process for completing this document consisted of several phases. In the beginning, we issued questionnaires. Those are included in the larger document as an appendix. Those questionnaires attempted to solicit certain information from individual staff. How many staff do you currently have? How many staff do you think you'll have in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? How do you do your business today? When you receive people, say at the animal shelter or tax administration, what do people do when they come to your counter? We strove to understand how they work and how we can improve upon that. So much so that we included in the questionnaire a section on can people work virtually? If the last couple of years have taught us anything, it's that we can be more flexible with our work environments. Folks like GIS and IT maybe are more successful at that than someone such as tax administration who has to receive a payment. We then took those questionnaires, reviewed them, and then met with each of the individual department heads and their appropriated staff to be able to say, yeah, this is what we intended when we said that we wanted you to do. We wanted this in our new space, or this is what we thought would happen when we added 4 more staff. We also talked about what spaces could be shared. So a lot of people said we need conference space, but you only need conference space twice a week. So we really streamlined the process to be able to say this is what we need and not what we want. Additionally, we discussed security functions in the building. We talked about how we can keep staff safe and how we can keep public safe, what we need to do to keep them separate within the building. We also walked existing spaces. Once we completed the questionnaires, we compiled them into a document that is tabular in format, the summary of which is included just behind the executive summary and the existing space resources, and that summarizes the gross square feet and net square feet anticipated for the current needs of the departments, and then again, on the planning horizons of 5, 10, and 20 years. We also took the time to go through each one of your facilities with our engineers and create a rating system for each of the buildings, their conditions, as to the systems that are in each of those buildings. Now, that is included under the existing space resources page. The intent of that document is to say, this building is in wonderful condition, it's brand new, you don't need to do anything to it, much like your 911 facility. It's not only, it is a functional building of good repair. Other buildings that maybe have some age on them are scored lower. I'll give you for instance. If the electrical system in the building is 60 or 70 years old, we may not be able to buy breakers for it anymore. They may be special order. We may have reached the maximum capacity of the electrical service on the building. That would lower its effective rating, saying that it would be more expensive to maintain or to upgrade in the future. We also completed conceptual building plans. Those are not included in this summary, but we looked at what would let's say an HRC building based on the 20-year need, what would that look like? We laid those buildings out and came up with concepts for where they could go within the county. And then we also prepared budgets. Now we looked at the 20-year need on the budgets, and we prepared a, worst case scenario is not the appropriate term for it, but it would be the highest value that we would expect to be expended. So we looked at the 20-year need, which is of course the highest space need, and then we extrapolated that into budgets that included building cost, site construction cost, furniture cost, all the engineering costs, contingencies, and then arrived at a total. I'm pointing out that it is based on the 20-year need because those numbers obviously are intended to be, here's our outer limit. And if the county looks at the needs and eventually says, you know, we need to dial that back, we can revisit this living document and make judgment decisions on that. But we wanted you to have that far out look for how much this could potentially cost. The breakdowns of all the budgets are included in the appendices, as are the questionnaires, as I indicated. The detailed analysis of each of the building conditions is included, and the plans of the buildings are included. We finally compiled that into a report and have submitted that to you. This is the summary of those findings. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions.
Gentlemen, you've heard the presentation. Sure there's questions or comments?
Mr. Bennett, I'd like to refer to one of the first tables, just as a matter of reference to just after your existing space, Burke County Space Needs Assessment. I just use the county administration building as an example. I'll try to give you a page number if I can see.
I may not have numbered the pages in this document.
Okay.
Is it this one?
That looks like it, yeah.
Great.
Okay, let's look at the county administration building. I just want to be sure I'm following the information. Under the current needs, total personnel, square footage 34,451. And then under that, you got current required gross square feet 45,934. Is that meant to say that currently we have 34,451 square feet, but it's your opinion that we ought to have 45,934 square feet for that number of folks?
Great question. It is not the amount that you have now. We were not able to ascertain the amount that we have now because we don't have existing drawings of all the buildings available. We have a rough idea of how much you have. What you're looking at, sir, is 34,451 net square feet of need. That is how much space you need for the office and the corridor outside the office. Then we apply what's called a grossing factor to that, which increases that amount to 45,934. That includes things like exterior walls, mechanical and electrical rooms, shafts within a building, any additional toilet rooms or service spaces that aren't encumbered in the individual space needs. So for your reference, in the larger document, there is a glossary included that has a diagram depicting what net square feet are and gross square feet are. And the last thing we want to do, I have a project now that is doing this. They've taken the net square feet and they're trying to build that. And it's just not enough. So we try to be as efficient as we can, and that is what that is trying to indicate.
Okay, thank you.
So just looking at Jeff's, that particular one, county administration building, so we currently have 70 personnel, so what you're showing, from what I'm looking at, is 2041 needs, and I know it's a guesstimate, but 92 employees, so an additional 22 employees, but the gross square footage, I guess, because of the building, is only 4,000 square feet difference.
Yes, sir. And there's that is another great point. In a building like an administration building, we have chambers, right? Which is a very large chunk of that space. However, when we add a staff person, we may only add a 48 square foot workstation. And by the time that gets plussed up for all the grossing factors, it only adds maybe 80 or 90 total square feet. So adding staff doesn't add square footage as much as adding support spaces does. So you're correct. We only add 22 people. We add 22 people, but it only adds a small amount. We push all the infrastructure to the beginning. Because if you were to build a building and not have enough conference rooms and try to build them later, it would be very difficult. Or try to expand a file room in 10 years. It's not going to happen. Everyone's desks are around it. It's very challenging. So we take support spaces and build your 20-year need as early as possible to save us on the back end. That makes sense?
That does, thank you.
Excellent.
Gentlemen?
Mr. Chairman, a couple of questions. A lot of good information, but this is not a 5-minute conversation by no means of the word. Somebody's going to really have to sit down and go through this and choose a lot of priorities and forget the rest for a timetable or whatever. But the theory you use, for example, and I'll go back and tag on to Jeff's questions. you have 70 employees and you're saying in 20 years, 20 years, you're gonna need 92. What formula do you use to come up with those kind of, I mean, with new technology and all this other stuff, I got a daughter who works at a bank, and it's amazing. It's out of this world of how many fewer employees they have and how much more work they get done. And I mean, she tells me some of the things that they do, and quite honestly, she says that most of the employees will not go back to the office more than 2 days a week for the coming year. They don't need them. They can work with technology from home as well as they do there. Now that's a scenario, and I'm sitting here thinking about all the changes that the banking entity has made. And, you know, nobody even uses a check hardly anymore. And it just takes so much action, or activity would probably be another word for it, from people who used to have a full-time job doing that stuff. And I think even in this arena, government, we're doing the same thing. We have people working for us, and they get as much done as they would have done, two people would have done 10 years ago. And that's a reference for we're jumping up 20 years, and we got 10 and 20. But again, I didn't give you an opportunity to answer the question. How did you derive at the figures? What formula did you use to say we're going to need 20 more employees down the road?
So unfortunately, there is no magic formula where we plug in the population and it spits out the number of employees that we're intended to have. We rely heavily on individual department staff making a judgment, and we also look to your neighbors and to your peers of counties of the same size. We've worked with counties, cities, and towns, and we've seen how they've grown and changed over the years. And we use that as a litmus to gauge what we're hearing from your own staff. And there are many occasions in this document where staff had asked for more, and we had talked to them, and they've realized, just like you've said, you know, you're right, we're going to automate that process in 3 years. Let's go ahead and not include that additional staff. And there have been times where they've said they haven't asked for enough, because we've said, you know, if you're going to implement more parks projects, you're going to need more landscapers, which means you're going to need more trucks, which means you're going to need another bay at your parks maintenance facility. So all that is to say that there is not a formula. It is all within good judgment of the people that do that work and folks like our team who have seen other counties go through that process. Within 5 years is usually pretty reliable. Most folks have probably submitted requests for staff within that time frame. So we feel like that's pretty good. Within 5 years, there's also usually a very large jump. You'll notice we're showing a over 10% jump in the first 5 years. Some of that's makeup, right? Some of that is saying, gosh, we've been understaffed for so long, we're trying to catch that person up now. So that's what this is trying to represent. So that 5-year need really shows where we think we're going to be within 5 years. 10 and 20 is trying to project out. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yes, that answers the question. I think that we all have the task of doing the impossible with the impossible sometimes, and sometimes when you do this kind of stuff, it's not just a guess in the sky. There is a reason that you came up with those numbers, and see, that's what I was after, to understand, you know, how did you determine that's how many employees I would need in 20 years?
Brian, I'll pick on you for a moment. 6 months ago, did your position exist?
No.
So we've added that position. And we've added an office for it too.
And I would just, to echo what Josh said, that's what the big part of the conversation was with the departments. It was it was the way they are framed quite often was, okay, this is the way you do your work. Let's deconstruct it. What's the best way? What's the most efficient way for you to do your work? And so that's when we met with the departments and took these questionnaires and restructured them. So there was a lot of back and forth with, and especially Mosey would challenge them and say, okay, well, you say you need 10, but 2 of these look like the future looks like they might be work from home positions. Maybe that number's bumped down to 8. So it was really kind of an department's wish list, I guess would maybe a way to put it. But the goal of that too was like looking past 5 years it is the understanding that the goal of this document is to be a living document. So you're right, there may be a change in technology in the next year that renders some jobs that, okay, maybe we don't need those 2 additional positions because we can do it remotely now. So, it's kind of it's meant to be a sliding scale.
Well, I think too, and I share this, we lost a dryer at my house. We've owned that dryer for around 14 years. And I had my wife to look up what we paid for that dryer. And it was $329. Guess what the new one cost? And we bought the cheaper, not to use the cheaper, but the lower price, obviously. We paid $849 for a dryer, and if you'd have bought a Speed Queen or Electric Lux, you're looking at anywhere from double that to $2,600 per unit.
And if you're able to get it in 2 weeks, you're doing something really great these days.
So life moves on, but this is a ongoing task, and I appreciate the documentation. At least you've got a base point to begin with. So, and
Yes, sir.
It helps to do that. But like I said at the beginning, this is a work session, not a 5-minute conversation somewhere down the road. So,
Mr. Chairman, I would like to say that Brian did sit in on every meeting, and I could see in his face when I first suggested that he be there, the fear and trepidation that ensued. But having him there was invaluable because he knows every corner of this county, and he was able to bring that different perspective that we so dearly needed on an effort like this. And I can't say enough about his professionalism and ability to handle all of that. So.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
Just a couple comments, Mr. Chair, if I may. Josh, in the summary, I always go back to this, and I don't know why I do. There's a sentence, the community has largely stayed the same size in terms of population. 4 rows down, we got because of past population increases. Then we go down a couple sentences, according to NCOSBM, we were at 90-some thousand, then we go down to 87,000. Obviously, the census that we took here in Burke County was just totally incorrect. No way to appeal it. The numbers are not there. I fear I think I understood you say the initial thrust may be for 5 years in the data that you've had, and you've kind of looked at it. But in the same vein, we're in a housing shortage. We're out there trying to build houses. And Burke County, I think, is unique. I in a way, do not like to comp other counties because I don't think they do as good as we do. God bless them, but I think we do things a little bit better, and I think it's been proven over the past 10 years what this board has done and what we've brought into the county as far as jobs, the School of Science, Math, and those other things that are coming in. I understand the process that you use to sit down to talk to people, but I want to be convinced that the initial thrust in the first 5 years is taking into account, what kind of population are we really looking at? Because I don't agree with NCOSBM. I don't think that's right. I don't think anybody in this room thinks that number is anywhere near right. I think we're well over $90-some thousand. And yes, we have undocumented people in this county that we still have to serve up at DSS. We still have to serve them at the health department. And as we make decisions as far as construction projects that we're going to have, and I hope you were aware that some of those things that we had in our minds, what we may have to do as far as construction projects, as far as DSS in the health department, was some of those things did you kind of take that into consideration? Are we on good footage here? Do you feel very comfortable with these numbers? Like I say, I don't agree with the population thing. I think we're going to be serving more people in the next 5 years than kind of what we're looking at right here. So if we prepare for 5, are we ready for 5? I guess, can you give me any guarantees?
Well said, Commissioner. Thank you. I'll back up to the first comment. I know you said, I saw where population's decreased, and then we say it's increased, and then we say it's decreased. The sentence that you're referencing, I'm saying staff growth has already increased because of past population increases. So if we look back at the population of Burke County to, say, 2000, between 2000 and 2010, we had pretty dramatic growth. Almost, if I'm recalling correctly, sir, I think 20,000 people. Yeah, it was correct. Significant. And then we leveled off. And we've stayed right around, according to the OSBM, 90, 87, 86, right? And we've stayed right around those numbers. Even when we're done with this, we're not done. Brian and I have been talking about that exact issue. How can we find out how many housing starts we've got? We know that we're building housing communities here, and we know that's changing the demographics of the locality, which changes services required, but it's also going to change your population in a way that OSBM obviously is not taking into account. And then the other item that I mentioned in here, and you just hit on it, sir, we have outside influences, right? So we have the school that just recently opened, and that's going to begin drawing daily population in. That's going to require service. And we have growth in surrounding counties, which is going to continue to draw people into Burke County. As we heard from tourism earlier, we're booming right now. And those people coming in require services that, that you aren't necessarily encumbered just based on population. Is that, I didn't say the word guarantee, I apologize.
No, I just think that definitely is a consideration. I don't think Carolina's Blue Ridge would be committing $38 million to a new wing of beds over at the hospital and a new cancer center if somebody had not seen that this county actually has grown. And we're going to have to entertain the fact that there's more people living here, either, whoever they may be, and I don't know that we have a great count. I just got to get a little bit, I want to make sure when we do this that we do it right.
Yep.
And make sure that we're covered. I like to go, and I think we all have been trying to go for 20 years if we could, but if there is the immediacy of 5 years that we need to take a look at, I want to make sure we get that 5 years right to start with.
I think that's very wise, sir, and I think that the 5-year projection would definitely give you breathing room beyond where you are today, and give you some good accommodation. I think when you see things like schools move in and hospitals begin to expand, there's an undercurrent of development that is making its way here. We just don't know what that is yet.
And Commissioner,
you've got my phone number.
Well, and Commissioner, I would just add, like Josh, that's why I think the discussion with the departments was so key, because a lot of those numbers came from the folks that are working with those populations and those groups. So they obviously have a much better idea than we do, or data from Census does, to what the trends are. So I think that helped prop up some of those 5-year numbers to know where things are at and where they're probably going to be.
And I think the growth in the departments, you can see the departments that are growing are the ones that are dealing with those populations. So.
I think, Johnny, you're right. What I see, I'm sorry. What I see is the amount of retail business. You're talking about the hospitals, but just look at the last 10 years, the retail businesses that open here. These companies wouldn't open here if they thought this was a dead county. And I mean, I bet you the retail is probably doubled in the last 10 years here in Burke County. It's amazing. I mean, we say our numbers are down, but retail is unreal.
It's a good point. You can look at our sales tax intake over the last year. It's increased dramatically. I can't remember exactly what that was Margaret, but it's tremendously, just like occupation tax at TDA. And I agree, just, piling in on that, being married to a realtor, I know we had plenty of houses at one time, but you're telling us, as a census, not you, that we've lost a population of 3,000 or 4,000 people. We got less than 60 houses that are available in this whole county. Doesn't add up, so I agree with Johnny that the census, that information cannot be correct, because we're at capacity in some ways, and we've got to expand that capacity, and so this is part of it. And so, but like I said, it's a living, breathing document. This is going to be ever changing, and so I think we've got some more opportunities. Any other questions, comments concerning this?
I think, Mr. Chairman, if I may, that all this is kind of transient. But most of us went to the furniture manufacturing Coronas. Am I saying that correctly? And if you took the tour, you found out right quick, they got a machine that takes the work of 12 people, and it cuts the fabric or the leather or whatever it is. And it, but we lost, to Johnny's point, we lost a tremendous population when the furniture manufacturing and textiles left our county, and it hasn't come back. And but I think there's some movement for industry. We are getting some industry back, but the modern manufacturing, it's the same with car manufacturing. If you saw a picture of a car line being produced in Detroit in the 80s, you saw a line of hundreds of employees putting that car together. Today, you go up there and you won't see but 4 or 5 employees, and all they're doing is watching the computers and the robots. So some of the labor won't come back, but we're doing, I think, as a county, as much as we can under the budget streams to bring people into the county, and we've brought a lot into the county. But it's going to take a long time to get as many employees working as we did in the late 80s and 90s to get back that population.
Any other questions or comments? Well, this is a good start, gentlemen. We appreciate all your hard work and great presentation. Like I said, this is a short conversation for this much material, but obviously we'll be pursuing this further. And this is an investment in the county, what we've done, in a long-term investment, because we don't have a plan unless we actually know what we're looking at in the future. So very good start. So thank you very much. Gentlemen, we've heard this information. What's your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I move to accept the Space Needs Assessment Report and include its information as part of the county's long-term budgeting and development of a long-term capital improvement plan.
Thank you, Commissioner Carswell. All those in favor signify with uplifted hand. 5-0, Madam Clerk. Brian, Josh, thank you once again for a great presentation.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Safe drive.
Thank you.
That'll move us to item number 3, finance acceptance of SCIF funds, and this will be presented by our Deputy County Manager, Finance Director, Margaret Pierce. Couldn't hide back there the whole time.
Those gentlemen knew the most about that, so let them explain it. The county received 3 allocations of funds, as we discussed before, in the state budget approved last fall. These agreements that we're asking for approval tonight are just so that we can accept the funding and come up with a plan of how to spend that funding. The agreements have been received and are included in your packet tonight that we did not have at pre-agenda. Board approval is required to execute the contracts and proceed with these plans we would need to come up with. You have one for the courthouse renovation repairs. That was $1 million. Potential construction of EMS Base 1 of $650,000, and funds to do renovations to make the old Burke Catawba facility a regional long-term substance abuse facility of $3.25 million. Again, this is just accepting the funds so that we can come back to you with a plan on how to spend those funds. It does not commit us to anything other than making sure the state knows we don't want these funds to go away. We want to keep them.
Thank you, Margaret, and obviously I appreciate you working with JR on the suggested motion about altering that so we can specifically say that we are going to, any information or expenditure will have to come before future board for any type of approval. This is just accepting the funds, so thank you for making that alteration.
Yes.
Gentlemen, you've heard the presentation. Any questions, comments?
Scott, I'd like to delete the last part of the three items on the regional long-term substance abuse, and make that a separate motion. I can't vote for that. I can vote for the first two, but I can't vote for that.
Gentlemen? So you're making a motion to approve the agreements with the state of North Carolina, accept funds for the state for courthouse renovations and repairs for $1 million and construction of EMS base 1, $650,000, and to authorize those two specific agreements, to authorize the county manager or his successor to execute any required agreement documents with the state of North Carolina, and to spend any such funds only after future board approval of a project and the project scope and extent of work.
Right.
That's correct. All right, gentlemen, we've heard Commissioner Abley's motion. All those in favor signify with uplifted hand.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to clarify what the motion is. I think the intent was to vote on the
Two specific agreements without the BCDCF for regional long-term substance abuse.
and then vote on it separately.
And vote on it separately.
Right.
So the motion that I just read excluded that particular one, and that will be in a separate motion. Okay. Go ahead, Commissioner Tyler.
Margaret, the most important statement in that article is question sentence number 2. Have we received the agreements for these funds as stated by the May the 17th, 2022?
Yes, sir, they're included in your packet.
Are those agreements stated that the funds have been delivered?
No.
No?
The agreements have to be executed. The agreements have to be executed before any funds would be released from the state.
So, you know, I'm about where we were with the previous meeting. If we don't have the agreement signed, if we don't have the money, why are we spending it? And I've noticed that all 3 items have strict rules about the funding won't exceed 1 million, the funding won't exceed 650, funding will not exceed 3.2. All 3 of the articles have a $120,000 salary that can be spent. I don't understand that either. You got 600,000 and you get 120 for salary, and you got 3.2 million and you got 120,000. So it's the item 7, audit will not be completed till 5 years after the funds have been spent. Is that normal for that kind of money?
The state can come in and re-audit the funds up to 5 years after they're spent. Audits will be done by our auditors annually on anything spent. I'm not familiar with the sentence in there about salaries, but I believe it would mean that we couldn't spend any more than that amount on salaries. But there's no intention, I mean, until we come up with a plan, but based on the type of projects we're talking about, I can't imagine salaries would be part of the plans the commissioners would want to spend these funds.
Well, and it's very complex, and you know, how did we come up with these numbers to spend this money? And we haven't got a plan and haven't got a quote on the plan.
We did not come up with these numbers. The state budget came up with these numbers. That's when we received them. They're not money that we applied for. They are simply funds that were in the state budget and allocated to Burke County.
Okay, who and when did we decide what was going to spend that money on?
We did not.
State didn't do that. They don't know we've got a jail that we can renovate. How did we get to there?
It's not funds that we applied for. It's funds that were allocated through the state budget. They made, I believe, approximately 650 individual allocations to different counties and municipalities within their last budget they passed in, I believe, October of 21. That was when we were made aware that these funds were out there and available for the county to potentially receive them. It's not a plan that's been created. This simply states that we are willing to come up with a plan, and that plan would be brought back to the commissioners before funds are spent in any of the three areas.
But that doesn't answer the question.
I don't know where the state legislature, why they chose these amounts. That would be a question, I guess, for our representatives who must have advocated on our behalf.
Well, let me ask the question another way. Who decided that these funds, number one, were available? Number two, how they would be spent? And I'll remind you that, and it's not you, it's as a reminder, I have requested several times of, you know, how much money we want to get. Let's get together, let's prioritize what could we do that would be better spent and be more benefit to more citizens of Burke County than just, we got a plan here, nobody knows where it generated from, and we don't know how the money got designated to those plans or to those projects would be a better word. And it just, as I said before, we got the cart before the horse. And we're in this verbiage that I am reading, it's not a guess. This is what you intend to do with the money. And we haven't even seen the plans.
The legislature specified the amounts and how it could be utilized, what projects it could be utilized on. Within those constraints, we're to come up with what might be courthouse renovations and repairs, what we might be able to do, such as HVAC units or roof repairs or maybe painting and renovations to courtrooms that might be needed. That's the plans we have to come up with and come back to you to determine what could be done under the million. But as far as it being $1 million for courthouse repairs and renovations, the legislature chose that and voted on that. We did not go to them for these funds. They were a gift from them for us.
How did they even know we had that's not accurate. Somebody had to tell them what we wanted, what we had, and I'm trying to determine if I vote for this, I'm voting for things not yet even with a building plan or a cost factor or anything. And what if that facility comes in at $6 million instead of $32.50?
Until this board votes on a plan for that, nothing would be spent.
Well, you're saying what I'm saying. We shouldn't vote on it until we see the plan. Till we know that we can get within those budget figures.
But what she's trying to explain, Commissioner Taylor, is this is a vote to accept the funds. Once the funds come in, she would have to come back with another proposal for us to approve. If we do not use those funds and agree on the proposal, then those funds will eventually revert back to the state if they go unused. This is just actually a gift from the legislature for us to receive the funds. And not specifying it, they're specifying what it can kind of be used for, but we don't have a presentation. We can't have a presentation and a plan beforehand. This is a time constraint that we have to accept the funds, and once the funds get here, if we don't use the funds, then they're just sent back to the state. Am I wrong?
Correct, correct. My understanding from the state budget office, apologies, was as I've spoken over the last couple of months with them on trying to get the paperwork together, what we had to do, we had to send a tax ID and things simply to get a contract, is we're one of 600 allocations that most of us were very surprised to receive. It's a pleasant surprise to get from the legislature. Instead of an unfunded mandate, this time we got funds with some restrictions, just simply has to be the courthouse. It can't be any county building. Okay. I bet our courthouse has different things we could do. I think Mr. Delahunt's talked about the sign out front has some collapse issues. This is a way we could fix that sign and not spend county dollars. We can do the roof repairs that are needed because it's leaking with these funds instead of county funds. But it was simply amounts that our legislators negotiated and came up with. They must have. We did not send them anything. The county manager did not send anything. It simply was done, and many places were surprised with the projects and the amounts chosen.
Scott, I can't believe that somebody didn't give the legislature whatever, a needs list for Burke County or whatever. I mean, I've been to Raleigh many times. I've never seen anything like this that, somebody had to put this in their repertoire or whatever. I mean, that just didn't happen, that they decided to give us $1 million for the courthouse. Somebody had to go to them, or somebody they had to ask somebody here or whatever. That just doesn't happen that way. Mr. Chairman, I'm
What we do
this
have.
is a, to me, Maynard's opinion, a somewhat tiny deal, and the only conclusion, since I can't get answers that I can come up with, is that this illegal meetings, under the table moves, had a secret committee meeting, evidently are the ones who documented this and sent it and decided what the money is going to be spent on. Does anybody who served on that committee want to step up and be truthful? Because that didn't just happen. They can't read our minds. There's no way for them to read our minds. And I still have big questions. You wouldn't sign a contract saying, if this guy gives me money, I'm going to build a $300,000 house, and you don't know if you're going to end up with a $300,000 house or a $500,000 house, and you sign the contract. That's not healthy financing.
Gentlemen, at this point, I believe, Commissioner Abley, you did make a motion to accept the first two agreements. Right. Do you still?
That's fine.
Or do you want to rescind that motion?
Well, I really don't like the way that business is being done here. That just doesn't seem kosher at all. I mean, really, I guess I'll rescind that motion.
That's allowable, County Attorney?
Oh, yes, with the chair's permission.
I'm sorry?
Yes, with the chair's permission.
Okay, all right. The motion's been rescinded.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the agreements with the state of North Carolina to accept funds from the state for courthouse renovations and repairs for $1 million, construction of EMS Base 1, $650,000 in renovation of the Burke-Catawba District Confinement Facility for a regional long-term substance abuse facility for $3.25 million, and to authorize documents with the state of North Carolina and to to authorize the county manager or his successor to execute any required agreement, documents with the state of North Carolina, and to spend any such funds only after the future board approval of a project and the project scope and extent of the work.
Thank you, Commissioner Britton. Everyone's heard Commissioner Britton's motion. All those in favor signify with uplifted hand. Those in favor, we're up 3. Those opposed, 2, Madam Clerk. All right. Margaret, thank you so much. Gentlemen, that'll bring us on to reports and comments. We do have a guest here from our good friend from the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners. This will be, he is our NCACC Outreach Associate, Mr. Neil Emery. He's going to give us a presentation on recruitment process for new county manager. Neil, how are you this evening? You've sat in a few of these meetings over the years, have you not?
About 30 years worth.
Different
topics, but always come back to democracy at work.
Yes, sir. Thanks for coming.
I want to thank you for the opportunity to address the board this evening, and to bring a welcome from, greetings from our association. I guess you know we have a wonderful association that has extremely good leadership with our executive committee. Anybody here on that committee? But no, we do appreciate your role with our association and appreciate the contributions of Commissioner Carswell as well as the rest of the board. It's only through our membership and the voice of 100 counties versus each one individually that we're able to accomplish the things we are as an association. This evening, I want to talk to you about a topic that Burke County hasn't talked about in a long time, and that is the replacing a county manager. I don't know how many on this board's ever had that privilege of hiring a county manager. I think Commissioner Taylor probably has, but that is something, if you can have a board that hasn't had to do it in a long time, that's a compliment to the county and to your staff and to the manager you have in place. And you're to be commended about it. I think Brian's had 12 years. And that's a good record in this day and time of public service. So I want to commend you on that. And at least our discussion this evening, I want to give you a little overview of, one, what your options are as a board as it relates to the filling of this position. And I would commend the board in the fact you're well ahead of the game, and that this isn't going to be a position that needs to be filled till late in the year or early in the new year. So you're well ahead of the process. And I commend you for getting ahead of that, because it may be one of those that seems like it doesn't take too long, but when you get in it, it seems like it can take more time than expected, and you've done well to do that. But really what I want to touch upon and not take too much time, there's a lot of this information in this packet that relates to specifics if you go into a process, but I just want to touch on a couple of points. One, thank you to express first just how important this decision is as a county manager, retired county manager, but also someone who's helped boards of commissioners hire county managers, to tell you I think this is probably, some say it's one of the most important decisions, but I would say there's a good argument that it's the most important decision that a board can make, in that this is the person you entrust to operate as you go about your careers and your lives, elected by the people as the governing board, but you turn this to this person to oversee that and to assure that your wishes are carried out in the community. So it's a vitally important issue for this county and for every citizen here, and vitally important for your success as a board. And I think that goes without saying. And so my purpose is to define and talk about what your options are moving forward as a board. There are a variety of options in filling a position such as this, but also talk about key factors that are common to all those options. There's some things I can't stress enough that I think is very important for a board to think about as they start this process. And think about, it's not just about the manager, it's about the staff, it's about the citizen, it's about the board. All those are players in this, and all those to be mindful of. So again, the first step in that, I think, is to define a process. And I think that's where we're at this evening, is you're going to start thinking about, as a board, it's going to be your choice, how do we proceed on this matter? How are we going to fill these shoes? You have several options, and one of those I'll touch upon in a moment is assistance of the association. So I'm going to say up front, I'm going to talk a little bit about what we can do, but also your other options. And let me stress that the association is here to help you how you want to be held. We only help, some counties, I will tell you, search for a manager, and they never contact us. Others may ask us to help them throughout the whole process. What we want to do is the Burke County to find out what's best for you and what makes you the most effective in selecting the meeting manager as you go about that. So we're here to help in any way we can. What are your options in moving forward? One is to do it in-house. And that means utilizing your own HR department and recruit and keep that all in-house and really operate and do that internally. I will tell you that has been done in the past more. It's sort of something that's not done as much as it was in the past, but I'm not saying it can't be a good process. But some of the factors we're going to talk about are just as important in that process, if not more so, than the other options. The second option is we're seeing more and more recruiting firm, a group to come in and help recruit candidates. This is a profession, like so many in public service, and you hear these requests daily about trying to find that public servant who wants to make this a career and has the professionalism to carry out this board's mission. Professional help of coming in and locating those candidates. So there's more and more counties we're seeing shift toward a professional management group to help. Examples, recently Person County went through this process, Alamance County went through this process, Harnett County went through this process. Those are counties that historically have done it in-house or with some assistance from the association, but this time have turned to the firm to help them. Not saying that's your answer, just telling you that's one of the options. The third is the association providing some assistance. Again, our degree of assistance is totally based upon what you desire. I've helped counties where simply my role stopped at this. What I'm doing this evening is giving you an overview. I've also had counties where I help draft ads and decide where to advertise and help set up the process, but then the board took it and ran from there. All they wanted was some input on how the process might look, and then they took it from there. I've actually sat in on reviewing resumes with the board and helped them narrow down that pool, determine who they want. So those are your three options to me is, again, internally do it with the firm or ask for assistance from the association. There's no right or wrong answer. There's what you've got to find out what's best for Burke County. And I can't stress that enough. And if you flip to the third page, I want to just touch on some points of why these things are so important and having the process is so important. And as we stress, it is important in regards to the board, and the board sets the tone for this, and there are several reasons that is so important for the staff and for the citizens. Again, we talked about the managers, the organizational needs. That's the person you depend on to provide feedback of where the county needs are, input as relates to budget. There's a reason the county manager is the budget officer by statute. That's a person you're going to depend on. That person is your resource regarding policy development. I'm sure all of you know, have turned to the manager to say guidance, but give us feedback, give us options, give us what the law says, give us what we can do, what others are doing. That's that professional pipeline back to you to help you make your decisions. One I can't stress enough is providing that administrative leadership daily. There is so much that goes on day to day. You know what's on your plate and what you deal with day to day as a county commissioner. But I can assure you the manager, his goal is to try to keep some of that off your plate and works toward that every day of handling those daily leadership items and leading the county staff. Brian, I think it attests to me one of the biggest challenges was working for my board, but also being a county employee and representing the interests of the employees in the workforce and trying to respect both those and my responsibility to both. You got to remember your biggest expenditure in county government is payroll, and having that, keeping that vital staff and that important staff, and the manager goes a long way toward doing that. Your ability to help that manager do that, I tell counties when I talk about this that every county, whether you know it or not, every county has a reputation. And there's counties with reputation where people like, man, that's somewhere I'd like to work. And then there's others, oh my, what's going on there? So you have a good reputation. You have that stability You have that location, you have that growth, you have that livability that makes you attractive. And that's something I think is to your advantage and something to be mindful of. But there are also responsibilities in this for the board. This is not something you do day in and day out. But I challenge you, don't. I've seen boards make the mistake of getting a rush. You know, we got to get a county manager, we got to get him in here, we got to do all. Please take a very deliberate approach, which I think you have. Here we are in May, we're talking about something months ahead, and that's why it's so positive. Is you've got to provide that leadership through this process and maintain it, consistent political leadership through this. Why that's so important is you're changing executive directors, so to speak. You're changing the head of county government in the day-to-day operation. All county employees are watching that. All county department heads are watching that. All of them are mindful of that. And in this atmosphere today, they have other options. And what they're going to look to the board is the board being very deliberate, doing what's best for the county, thinking about going out and finding that person that can try to fill the shoes of somebody we've worked for 12 years. They're mindful of that. And I think that's important to stress. You've got great staff, and those you have, you want to keep. And you can begin showing that this process and spelling out this process, what it's going to be about, reassures that staff that this is going to be it's maybe not a fun process, but it's one that's well thought out and one that we're mindful of what this means to you and to the citizens. And we're going to do it very professionally and very deliberately and follow a schedule in trying to do it. So I can't stress that enough, how important that is for your organization and developing however you choose. Remember, I would just stress whether you use outside, internal, whatever, it's your process and what you want it to be. And I'll touch upon some points that are important there. Have a plan in place of how you want to go about recruiting. Sometimes counties have to deal with interim managers. I'm not sure that's something you'll have to deal with because you've got time. But that's a point that a lot of counties have to think about. Knowing where the county stands as you make that transition. I know Brian will be available for the new person coming in, but at the same time, being things up to date, staff up to date, we're going to make this transition. We've got to be prepared, and the board to be heads up on that. When you actually get down to it, and what to expect, and the items I want you to be thinking about as you begin these deliberations as a board. I can't stress enough a job profile, and that would seem very basic, and whoever you might choose to help you with this and however you proceed, make sure you're all on the same page. What do you want in a manager? I've had boards that, they ran an ad and they got a resume, and they realized, Commissioner X's most important thing is economic development. Commissioner Y's most important thing is financial stability. Commissioner Z wants somebody that's out in the public selling the board's policies. Make sure you're on the same page. You don't have to agree on it, but just make sure you understand where everybody's coming from. Determining what you want in that new manager. What do you expect out of that person? What kind of educational level you expect in that? How you handle this process, and remember this, I can't stress it, however you proceed. When you interview candidates for this job, they're interviewing you as much as you're interviewing them. Because the candidates that are going to apply for this job have probably got a good job where they're at. They're successful where they're at, but they're wanting to extend their career or maybe move on to a larger unit. So remember, they're interviewing you as well. The foot you put forward is important to them and those that are applying. So be mindful of that. That's another reason to have a very structured and a scheduled process. I would encourage you whenever the process, whomever you ask to assist, is to make sure y'all are actively involved in that. Having a good process as far as questions and interview questions, how you want to do that, how you want to present that. That's your time to ask. What their philosophies are on different things. You've sort of gotten into that pattern. You've had the same person in that role, and you sort of know where they're coming from, and they know where you're coming from. But whoever you get, however successful they are, they're not going to be Brian anymore. It's going to be someone else, and having that, being clear about what their philosophies are governing as you move forward. And again, that's for your sake as well as the employees. simple things come down then to how do you want to be thinking about is the process you want, where do you want to advertise. Advertising is so much easier now. You just put it on the web and boop. Used to, you had to think about what papers you're going to put it in. You put it on the ICMA website and the County Commissioner Association website and the League of Municipalities website, and it pretty much everybody knows about it. It's covered. So therefore, you don't have to have as long an advertising period as you used to. People used to say, well, you got to run in the paper several Sundays, and now 30 days is a long time to advertise for a job such as this now. But that's not where the time really is invested once you decide how you want to do that. One, I can't stress enough, in your pool of applicants is confidentiality. I always put it this way, and I've been on the other side of that interview process. When someone's giving me a paycheck, if I have to choose, I'm staying with my paycheck in regards to confidentiality, meaning if names become public and people find out, their employers find out they're looking, that's when you're going to get called, I withdraw. I'm not going, so confidentiality, respecting the confidentiality of the process and the candidates that apply. Think about whether you hire a firm or take it on your own about how you're going to screen the applicants. I'm an old school believer that I encourage every commissioner to look at every resume that comes in. May take some time, but the people that have elected you, I would think, might want you to be directly involved. And I will tell you, I tell you that because there's some search firms that you'll talk to, they may want to say, we'll narrow it down to 3 people for you. I'll just be honest, I don't like that process. I think the governing board is who that manager has to work for. And that there's great management, great firms out there, recruiting firms, but at the same time, remember, it's your process and how you want it to work. Be mindful of how we're going to screen applicants, who's going to be involved in that process, how are we going to review that, who's going to follow up, how are we going to present that. So all those things are important. 2, again, as you get ready, and we talked about that job profile, remember, I would do that up front. Think about the things that are important to you. Think about time. Think about how long you want this to take, how you want to proceed. And then again, when you're finalists, there's things that you think, well, we don't have to think about this yet, but there is going to be that time where you have to think about how are you going to narrow it down, how are we going to enter negotiations, because this day and time there's contracts involved with managers. That's a part of it now, of how you're going to handle that, who's going to represent the county in those conversations. It differs. Some counties it's the county attorney, some counties it's the chairman. That's things you have to decide, what's best for you. Other things to keep in mind that are in these notes is about little things can make a difference in recruiting, what kind of package you offer a manager. Can he bring their sick leave? Can they bring their longevity? Little things like that can add up, make a difference whether somebody wants to make a move or not. So it's not all monetary. Keep in mind there's other factors that can be. But again, I don't want to take too much of your time. I want to just go back and stress a few points. One is to be organized from the beginning. This board, make that decision what you think is best for Burke County. That might involve, some counties do that RFP for firms to come in and help, interview them, and then they may say, well, we feel better doing it ourselves. Or we might call the association to help. Again, we're there to help however we can. So think about that. That would probably be one of the next discussions you have to have. Maintaining control of the interview process, maintaining in the public, keep the public informed, the staff informed where we're at. We talked about confidentiality, but that doesn't mean you can't keep them posted. Where's this process at? Because you know how silence can be a real rumor mill. I hear they're saying being upfront about where the process is at is vitally important. Keep in touch with all the applicants, make sure it's done in a professional manner. And develop, at the end of the day, a timetable as you enter into this. Hey guys, here's where we're committed. I've seen boards say, get down to the point of saying, okay, if we're gonna look at all the resumes, everybody's gonna commit, we're gonna do it the next week. And we're all gonna play. That was one county I saw did that, and it worked for them. They had it set up where each board member came in to a conference room at the administration building and sat down with them and went through them and rated them. Then they came back together and decided. It was amazing to see. This is a board that may not agree on a lot of things, which you're not supposed to. It's a democracy. You're supposed to have different opinions. But when they reviewed all those separately, they came back, and I think their top 3 candidates were pretty much the same by looking at what they wanted as board. So again, stressing about being organized, being upfront, recognizing the importance of the position and what it means to the organization, recognizing staff and their role in this. Again, they're not going to be directly involved, but being mindful of the importance of the staff and what this means to them and this change. And again, getting on the same page as a board about what you want, the strengths that you want to see in this manager. I can't stress that enough. So I'm going to stop there and answer any questions. But again, those are the options which we see at key points I think are important. And again, you've got a good product here. You've got a great opportunity. You've got a big shoes to fill, but you've got a great opportunity because of Burke County, where you're at, where you livability is important, schools are important with families and all that might come with that. So, but again, that doesn't mean not planning it out and have a professional approach to it. Any questions?
Neil, thank you. That was very informative. You and I talked a couple months ago,
Yes.
been talking about this, and kind of, you know, we, as you said, we're starting early because we're going to take a slow, methodical approach, and we want folks to be aware of what we're doing. That's why I appreciate you coming in from a little farther east. I know you're on your way to Weaverville, but I appreciate you coming and sharing the information. Gentlemen, at this point, any questions or comments for Neil?
Mr. Chairman, just one. Can you tell us a ratio? How many people use a professional hiring consultant versus doing it on your own?
If you'd asked me 5 years ago, I'd have told you that only the larger urban counties used a firm. Now I would tell you it's over half are using a firm. Someone to help.
Over half.
They are using some type of professional group. And I will share, if you need an RFP for that, samples, you know, Person County, other counties that have utilized that, Harnett County, all of them have had recent hires. If you want to take a look at any of those RFP, I think Person got.
Do you know what they paid, either one of those counties, to the firms?
I don't want to quote it, but I think it was less than.
Somewhere close.
It was less than 30 for Person. But now I will tell you, a lot of that is based upon what role you want them to take. You know, if they walk the whole process through, or if they just there to help in the recruiting piece of it. So that can vary quite a bit too. But some of those counties have those RFPs if you want to take a look at them, or if you need us to track them down. But I know they've just recently gone through those processes. But it is a change, and it's simply a change because right now with the volatility of the job market and people are having to seek out. Harnett County just recruited a manager, the city manager, to Topeka, Kansas.
Wow.
But they have a tremendous utility system, and they needed somebody with utility experience, and they zeroed in on that. And he wanted to locate to North Carolina. So that's other factors. Had family here.
One more question, please. Any laws updated in the last 5 years, 8 years, that changes the perspective of how you hire somebody? I don't know if there's stricter rules about minorities or any of that base whatsoever.
No, there's nothing. I mean, different boards have different approaches to that, but no, there's no restriction or quota, so to speak, related to that.
No new regulations
No.
that we need to be aware of?
No, just in North Carolina, you can maintain confidentiality. You know, some states have, I think Florida's one where it's all an open process. North Carolina still permits that, which I think is a positive thing.
And Neil, just for record, this is just a service because we're a member of the NCACC, just for public record that this is a service y'all provide and do not charge for.
That's absolutely.
And so when somebody asks, okay, if you go with NCACC, that is just one of your professional courtesies, which is pretty amazing. And even if we get a firm, you'll lead us down the path on how to proceed with go with a firm if we wish to do so.
We will take any role that this board wants us to take in assisting you with this.
All right. Well, Neil, thanks for the clarity. I believe, any other comments? If not, have you a safe drive on your continuation to Weaverville.
I gotta go do my mom's, to-do list.
Okay.
I'm still doing mama's to-do list. Thank y'all so
Understand.
much. Good to
Thanks
see you.
again.
Thank you.
Well, gentlemen, that is great information. We'll move on to item number 2, reports and comments. We'll start with Margaret.
No, sir, thank you. Everything's in the packet.
JR.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since the last meeting of Commissioners on April 19th, I've drafted a termination agreement for Hoff Development Company concerning the Fauna Flora County Park glamping project. I have assisted the Register of Deeds office with harassing emails. I have worked with Department of Social Services on an ongoing lawsuit, including a Zoom meeting with our trial counsel, and this case has now been dismissed against Burke County. Previously, I have reviewed the Tourism Development Authority leave of absence policy. I have researched real estate proposed for EMS Station 1. I have assisted the Burke County Board of Elections with a public records request. I've begun drafting the Eckerness local agreement. I have attended a meeting of the Burke County Commissioner Burke Board of Education Working Group. I have assisted the Burke County Board of Elections with a purported slip and fall that took place at the Glen Alpine Polling Center. I've begun drafting the Meritor local agreement and reviewing the One NC grant agreement for that project. I have assisted the Health Department with a contagious disease compliance order. I have assisted the Human Resources Department with a proposed public records request. I've assisted the Health Department with a review and recommendations concerning a contract with Work for Change. I have assisted the Human Relations Department concerning an agreement for employee health assessments, and I have assisted the Burke County Sheriff's Office concerning providing private records of an inmate under court order.
Thank you, JR. Madam Clerk.
No comments for me tonight, thank you.
Mr. Steen.
No comments, thank you.
Commissioner Abley. Commissioner Taylor.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the MTAC board, the highway board, they requested that each one of the counties represented to highlight some stuff out of our last meeting, and wanted Brian Horton to send me one page that was complete, and that's his page. He sent 2 others, and it's good information, and you can have that, but I'm going to concentrate on the page, and all the map is not there, so you'll not be able to see all of them, but it was important for us to take this sheet and explain to you what's happening with the highway funds. They're really, really down, and I wanted to do an in-depth kind of study. And if you look at this sheet, do you have this sheet? Kate, I got this, right? Yeah. Remain delivery, there's 3 of them, and that simply means that they're going to strip down these bridges to the bare beams and put it back together, do a new surface altogether, and that includes exit 118, which is old 10 and Hildebrand, 181 in Morganton, and Castle Bridge at Catawba River, and those are listed on that sheet as green. Now, what's going to happen is those roads will be closed from 45 to 60 days. You will not be able to cross the interstate on those three locations. Under the, I call it a dirty brown, a Remain Development 6, you've got 6 locations there. They have been approved to do. They've working on the right-of-ways to get everything ready, but the funds have never been agreed for those 6 locations. And it looks like those 6 locations won't even start to be funded. They were to start in 2023, and now they're moved into the late 20s, 2028, 2029, and before they're done, it'll probably be pre-prioritized, and we may lose one or gain one, I don't know, but the 116 at Eichard had a construction firm to get called under it. It's below the 14-foot level, and they were hoping to get something done on that one, but I don't know which one will be first or which will be last because it will be pre-prioritized. The purple unfunded 2, and it's on your map, and it's also below there. 64 at Berkmont and US 70 Fleming and 181 at Oak Hill. And unfunded is I-40 exit 98, which is the Cosby Road, and they're listed 126 and 128 on your sheet. But the bottom line is that those that have been approved and have funded will be backed up probably a year or two, but they will be completed. And the ones I'm showing you tonight, the reason they're going to do those remands, which is stripping a bridge down to nothing but the steel beams and going back up with it and a new surface, those are coming from a different fund, so it won't depend on the gas tax revenues to complete it. Moving to other things, I do want y'all to realize that I really am going to regret missing the photo shots with the judges. I will be 6 hours away participating with ordination for my son Adam at a church at Powell's Point, North Carolina. The other thing, most of us attended District 13 convention in Morganton. I believe, if my memory serves me right, that's only the second time that we've had that district meeting in Burke County. We've had it several times in Catawba. I've been to one in Caldwell. I've been one in Alexander County, but it was nice to have that event here. We got to make a lot of old acquaintances, and it was fun. Attended the groundbreaking event for skilled education at Western Piedmont Community College, and most of y'all were there for that event, a good event, and I think a good direction to get, we got to get some people who are willing to work and take over jobs at plumbers and electricians, that people 60 and 70 years old are the only ones doing it anymore. And just recently attended with some of y'all the ribbon cutting ceremonies for the Morganton Square. They had a good turnout for that. It was a nice event. And I think that concludes my comments. So.
Thank you, Commissioner Taylor. Mr. Britton?
No.
All right. Well, gentlemen, just a couple courtesy reminders. May 19th, special meeting, 2 p.m. for budget. May 27th, special meeting at 9:30 a.m. budget. May 30th, offices closed for Memorial Day. June 2nd, budget meeting if needed. June 7th, pre-agenda. And June 21st, our regular meeting. Would also like to remind everybody, and it's not on here, but please, do not litter and please spay and neuter your animals. That being said, I'll move on to vacancy reports. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. We have the following opportunities to citizens to get engaged in county boards and committees. The Adult Care and Nursing Home Community Advisory Committee, Burke County Parks and Recreation Commission, City of Morganton for the Planning Board and Board of Adjustment for the ETJ, Burke Senior Center Advisory Council, Child Protection and Child Fatality Prevention Team, East Burke Senior Center Advisory Board, Burke County Board of Adjustment, Council on Aging, Burke County Board of Health, Partners Consumer and Family Advisory Committee representing traumatic brain injury, and the Animal Advisory Board.
Is that all, Madam Clerk?
I believe it is.
All right, well, citizens that are watching, please, I would encourage your participation. There are multiple opportunities in the community to become involved, so please contact our office and we'll be glad to put you to work. Gentlemen, there is no need for a closed session tonight, so with that, I'll accept a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Commissioner Taylor. All those in favor signify with uplifted hand. Madam Clerk, that is 5-0. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.